Good evening and welcome to the 40th District Legislative Virtual Town Hall. Tonight you'll be hearing from State Senator Liz Lovelett and State Representatives Deborah Lacanoff and Alex Ramel. Some of you have submitted questions in advance, and I will read those questions to the lawmakers. You may also submit your question live via the comment section. So please submit your questions now, and we'll try to answer as many as we can. Before we begin answering questions, I'd like to open the floor up to our lawmakers for some brief opening remarks. We'll begin with Senator Lovelett. Senator Lovelett, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And thank you, as always, so much to our incredible staff and communications team who help make events like this possible, to be able to interact with the public in these challenging times. And really reaching out today to say, I wish we could be here together in person, but I appreciate all of the modern amenities that have made it that much easier for people to participate in democracy. So welcome to everyone tonight. On behalf of myself and my seatmates, I appreciate you taking time out of your evenings to be able to hear more about what is happening in your state legislature. I am Liz Lovelett, representing you out here in the state legislature in the Senate on my fourth session already. I feel like the appointment happened just yesterday, but here we are, and proud to stand here with my seatmates who are such incredible hard workers and incredibly collaborative on the work that we do. A couple of things that I'm working on this year as I continue to serve as the Vice Chair of Energy, Environment, and Technology, as the Chair of the Senate Ferry Legislator Caucus for the Transportation Committee, and as the local government lead on our Housing and Local Government Committee. Things that are top of mind are trying to help folks who are continuing to struggle during the pandemic, making sure that we are continuing to make action on climate change a reality in our communities, and making sure that we have some pretty critical land use decisions that are going to be happening over the course of the next few years, and providing leadership and guidance on that. So I have a few bills that I'm really excited about. The main thing, of course, for me is keeping track of the ferry system. I tried to keep my portfolio of bills that I was running fairly light in order to have a tremendous amount of focus on the transportation element, what we're going to get out of this package, how we're going to continue to restore service and build boats, but also excited to continue my work on removing derelict vessels from our waterways, on improving kelp and eelgrass habitats in our maritime environments, and continuing to get good food benefits to folks in our communities who are hungry. So I'll keep it brief. I know you guys will have questions about all the fantastic legislation we're working on, and I will pass it off to my esteemed seatmate, Representative Deborah Lacanoff.
It's wonderful to be here with you all. Liz, it's great to see you. First, I want to start off and say happy birthday, my friend. It's been an incredible couple weeks. I got to sit and visit with Alex just 2 days ago, and I haven't seen Alex in such a long time. And Alex, it was great to see you down in Olympia. And I got to tell you, this guy's working really hard down there. Liz is working down there. Both of them are on the floor, in and out of their offices. I'm in and out, and I think during this pandemic, in the last 2 years, we've really been trying to find a way to coordinate how we incorporate today's technology in our governance as our governance tools. And I think we might be becoming mute experts, right? You're on mute. We can't hear you. Turn your volume up. We can't see you. And at some point, I think some of us become technical experts. You know, I just want to thank Liz and Alex for really the true partnership that we've had in the last couple of years. A lot of our values run alike and run seamlessly together. We're like a fish running upstream. We're like a ferry running on time. And we're like climate change being attacked by three great representatives. We've got a couple of great bills running out of my office that is really focused on natural resources, the environment, and really making sure we have a healthy environment for all. It's been exciting to really talk with my fellow legislators on addressing workforce development for our nurses, for our caregivers. Today, I was so excited to sit with SEIU and talk about how we seem to forget as a society how important our elders and our people of disabilities are. We don't have enough workers in the work system to take care of our most sickly and precious people. We don't have enough doctors, enough nurses. We don't have enough caregivers. Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, my two friends here, we sit at the same time talking with those who say, we don't have enough teachers. We have teachers who are in the older system that we need to take care of their health. We have teachers coming in with the new system. The three of us sit here and we all have children. Alex's son is going off to college. Liz's girls are in grade school. My daughter's graduating this year at 18 and going off to Western. We are family oriented people. We know that we need to integrate better ways of how we can accomplish building the workforce development for healthcare, for caregivers, for education. One of the things that I've had just an extreme, my heart is so full when I work with Alex and Liz, because we know what's happening out there with our public safety officers. We want to work with them. We want to collaborate. We want to protect our public safety. We want to build those programs. In Mount Vernon alone, the three of us got to be able to ride along with the police officers and public safety, work with Mayor Bordeaux, work with the chief of police, and understanding for the last 10 years, our chief of police in Mount Vernon, they're reaching out into our Latino communities and they're building relationships. And we in our rural community understand that public safety is important across the state, but we're still rural people. We still reach out, we still care. Loved Alex, right? Meeting this social service employee for the last couple of years who's been driving to Mount Vernon with Mount Vernon Police and working and checking in with the people. One thing I got to remember, I want to thank our friends to the north, Representative Shoemake and Representative Rule. During the rainstorm and the freeze storm, it was us who were on the phone. We were calling Dave Paul, are you okay down there? We were calling Alicia and Sharon, are you doing okay? We were calling our communities. We were reaching out to our homeless folks. I think at the end of the day, I'm really grateful for the people I get to work with. The North End, I got to tell you, the North End of our state and your representatives are working well together, whether it's with Senator Wagner, whether it's with Representative Eslick, whether it's reaching over to Representative Dave Paul. We're a family. And being able to run with the famous Sharon Shoemake and her TikToks and being able to enjoy our time learning on social services and taking care of our children and families from Alicia, you got a great team. The three of us grew our family. And I think that's what I like the best about us, is we're all family. So I'm looking forward to talking about my bills a little bit later, but I want to turn it over to my friend Alex.
Thanks, Deborah. One of my favorite things about doing these town halls is that our constituents and our communities get to see the way that we interact and the way that we can lean on each other, and the way that we can work together. The way that you see us interacting and each taking over when the right topic comes up for us is really a reflection of the collaboration that we do down here in Olympia, trading back and forth when it's priority for our community. There's always one of us that's ready to sort of step in and figure out what needs to be done. I really appreciate everybody tuning in to connect with us today. It's great for all of us to pause and in the middle of a very busy 60-day legislative session and just make sure we're reconnecting with the people that we're representing and hearing your voices and your priorities and questions. Just briefly mention the areas of work that I'm focused on right now. So I'm on the Transportation Committee, and as Liz mentioned, the biggest priority there for our community is making sure we get ferry service right. And that's both the immediate term with our workforce shortages and long term with investing in making sure we have the vessels that we need to have reliable service into the future. I'm working on the Energy and Environment Committee. Priorities there are making sure we confront our climate crisis and take on the very different challenges that come with different pieces of that crisis. But we've got a lot of work to do there, and I'm eager to tackle that. I'm on the Finance Committee, where we're looking at our tax policy and trying to make sure that our state's upside-down tax code is rebalanced and made fair. And then I'm also serving as the deputy whip, and I'm on the Rules Committee. And really what that means is that we help make sure that we keep our team organized and coordinated and help set the priorities for the caucus. So really appreciate this team and the chance to connect here, and looking forward to taking questions.
Great, thank you. So this is just a reminder that you're watching a live virtual town hall with the 40th Legislative District, and you can submit questions via the comment section. So our first question tonight is, what are some of the new bills introduced this session to address the need to take care of our unhoused residents?
I'm happy to lead us off. So one of the bills that we heard recently has to do with working in coordination with the Department of Transportation to help move unhoused folks that are in DOT right of way to safer and secure housing that is connected to social services. So this is a problem that we see particularly in our urban areas, but it affects us in rural spaces as well. You know, folks are living under overpasses, they're living under bridges, and in other places where we are in our transportation core, which is not only just a complete moral quandary for our times, ensuring that people have access to safe and adequate housing, but additionally poses a huge safety hazard for folks that are using our roads and bridges. So I'm looking forward to continuing work on that bill. It connects both on the housing and local government side for me, but also on transportation. So this is something that I know is a high priority to start to work on some of those folks that are living in really just unsafe places to get them rapidly rehoused.
And I would just add, this is something I've said before. I'm a broken record on this. Deborah's heard me say this probably hundreds of times at this point. But the highest priority in this space is making sure we fully fund the need with the Housing Trust Fund. That's the state's tool that we use to support all of the critical nonprofits out there. There are partners in addressing this crisis. The state government doesn't need to do it all ourselves. We don't need a program for everything. What we need is well-resourced partners, and fully funding the Housing Trust Fund is the way that we do that.
And you're absolutely right, Alex. At least 120. At least 120, my friend. Because when I got to meet Alex, we were running up in Bellingham and down in the Skagit in the same circles of housing, and Liz came in, and her experience at the city council really taught me too. How do you bring these governing bodies together to address the housing challenges around Washington State, right? It's our homeless community that we need to take care of. And it was actually a constituent from Bellingham who taught me. She's like, Deborah, not everybody wants to be in a home. There are at least 100 in Bellingham that we know of that want to advocate to continue trying to build their life. And this is what they know. They want to live this lifestyle. How do we take care of them? How do we make sure they get their vaccinations for COVID? How do we make sure they're getting fed? How do we know that they're getting mental services? How do we relate at local, state, federal, and tribal governments to take care of them? And that relationship is so vital and important. And we saw what happened in Bellingham during the COVID time, the stress we saw within the local land, state property, etc. And we really worked together. You can't make everyone happy. I gotta say, I've tried, and I really tried. But I gotta say, I've learned my lesson at 50. You can't make everyone happy, but you can take care of people to the best of your ability. The governor's bill that we're looking at, House Bill 1782, Senate Bill 5670. They're moving forward. They're going to be helping our communities. They're going to really help those housing bills. I want to remember last year too, when we're going to continue to invest this. You can't be a one-stop, here's a bill that's going to save the world, right? We all have worked in housing for so long that we can really look towards increasing rehab on existing buildings, making sure that the buildings that are nonprofit organizations don't raise so much in costs that we can't afford to have them. I look here in Anacortes, and I got to tell you, I've moved to Anacortes, and I love your community, Liz. 5 generations you've called this place home. Your ancestral home is across the street from where I am. But the community of Anacortes is teaching me through the Anacortes Family Care Center that they're building homes that are going to address how to work towards those who are homeless. And when you come into the Anacortes Family Homes, not only is Dustin giving you the assessment and the attention for counseling, but they do the full-on assessment. They check in. Oh, that's my dog coughing, not me. Oh, hold on. He's getting sick. Hold on. Real life drama. Nope, he's okay. But having Dustin really talk with us about doing an assessment on your human health, making sure that you're okay legally, making sure that if you need someplace for teaching, for schooling, and for counseling, for drug abuse, for alcohol abuse, and then, right, Liz, we've used community money and we use state and federal money to build apartments here in Anacortes where we can help transition. And the famous story, and I know I'm long-winded. I think I'm excited. I miss Liz and Alex a lot. But Dustin was telling me the story of this family, and this is what we do as a team. This family came in with 2 children. They had lost their home. They were in a difficult situation. They were under, the influence of drugs. They were trying to survive. Within a year, my friends, this family moved into this apartment complex. They got the counseling. The kids were in school. They built their credit. They got the training. Within a year, they were buying their first house because they had gotten jobs. They had gotten jobs that helped them build their future so their little ones had a home to come home to. And that's what the 40th is about. That's what our bills are about. Picking up the phone and talking to Liz and Alex. I can't run across the aisle and wave at Liz and have her come up at me. And I can't smile down the aisle and look at Alex and have him come up and say, what are we doing? We pick up the phone, we text, we Zoom, and we say, what do we need to do in housing to be able to help our 40th? And those are some of the success stories we want to continue to tell.
You all. Do you support non-binding after the ballot? I believe that's Senate 2.
I'm sorry. I'm having a little trouble. I didn't quite catch that.
Did it not come through? That's okay. So sorry, everybody. A little technical difficulty on this side. The next question is, do you support removing advisory votes, which are non-binding after the fact polls from the ballot? That's Senate Bill 5182.
Got it. Thanks. Thanks for that question. So as a reminder, those non-binding advisory votes were added to the ballot. I don't know, what was it, a decade ago, 15 years ago, something like that. It was a Tim Eyman-led initiative that put those on there. And they have no effect, which means that every year, if you're following politics, you have to go do a whole bunch of homework and then try to figure out what does each of these things do. And I get calls every single year from folks who are asking me, what's the effect of this? What will happen? They want to understand, they want to make a good decision on how they vote. And when I get to the part where I explain that this vote has already been taken, this is already the law, you're just saying whether you like it or not, and it doesn't matter how people vote, it will still be the law. People get upset. Folks feel sort of jerked around, like we're wasting their time. So I absolutely support removing that from the ballot because they don't have any effect, and we're asking people to do something that doesn't matter. And I think if we're going to ask voters for their time, we should make sure that it matters.
Great. Thank you, Rep. Bramall. So this is just a reminder that if you have a question for your 40th District lawmakers, you can submit it via the comment section. Our next question is, what is the progress towards raising the levy lid so public schools can capture the funding their communities have voted in? Senator Loveland?
Sure, I can start digging in on this one. So as you all know that are in the kind of school board and school administration space, particularly in the San Juan Islands, but also here in Anacortes, the change in the levy formula has been pretty disastrous, to say the least. I know that there has been some help on the way via ARPA funds, and our offices have done our best to coordinate to make sure that you're getting every line item possible out of the state budget that funds basic ed, particularly as it relates to special education in our schools, because we know that we have kind of a higher than the state average amount of folks with independent education plans in our school districts here. the state of affairs is, I will say, while we cover pretty much everything in the climate and transportation space, none of us are on education. And what we have heard pretty frequently is that how hard it was to get the levy formula changed in the first place to try to take care of some of these rural schools, that the dust has barely settled with that. And there's been a lot of reticence to reopen it. We have talked to our colleagues relentlessly to try to determine if there's a path possible in either chamber. We have worked on, I'm really excited about a new reformulation around the transportation distribution. I'm excited about having opportunities to pass a bill that will work on providing housing benefits to teachers in order to put them in some of these harder to place and higher than average living expenses communities like what we have in the 40th. But it continues to be a real hurdle. And so we will continue to advocate, but it has proven a lot of dead ends. And so continue to work on collaborative approaches to how we can ensure that we are elevating these issues, but it has been really challenging to get any traction with our colleagues.
And I want to thank my two colleagues. We had Senator Wellman up here this summer, who's chair of the Senate, Education. Senator Wellman has been there for many, many years. She is equivalent to Chair Santos over in the House. And I worked on education when I first came in, hearing from all of our superintendents. And thank you to the 40th for your superintendents, because I told L.A. Cole when he was coming on, and Amanda, your L.A., and Jordan, your L.A., we all told my L.A. Cole, you are going to be able to build a folder on the superintendents within this area who are fighting every day to make sure we get funding for education programs. You know, we had an incredible leadership with Chris Litton, who was chair of the finance, who committed her life working on the finance and making sure education was important and vital to the state legislature. Senator Wellman and Chair Santos did the same. You know, when we're talking about increasing the levy, when we're talking about increasing funding, when we're looking at diversifying funding opportunities, one of the comments that I want to share with you guys is transportation for our children, especially out in the San Juan Islands, when we talk about education, is vital and important. And working with Alex and Liz on educating that not only are we working on a school system that provides a safe place for our children, our teachers are safe and they're in a safe working space. Every opportunity is available for them to get the best education, but they also have to have the best transportation. And I want to commend San Juan County for coming and telling us and reminding us, going back to Liz's commitment to ferries. These children out in San Juan Islands are taking ferries like school buses. And when the ferries shut down, these school buses shut down. That means grade school children are stuck on an island without their parents in a school system and trying to find their way home in the storm. What San Juan Island has done for years, and Liz and Alex and I've heard this, and it just, this is what community and rural community does. Parents get in a boat, they drive over to the island in a private boat, and they bring their children home. And this is the lifestyle of San Juan Islands. This is rural community. And I share that because it really doesn't answer the question that you guys were leaning towards on levies, but it talks about the community spirit that the 40th has and the 42nd. Not only are we just talking about levies, but we're talking about ferry systems and safe places for our children. We're talking about counseling. We're talking about nurses. We're talking about behavioral health. We're talking about centers for our opioids that are impacting our children. We're talking about keeping our teachers safe for COVID. And these are the conversations that I get to sit with the three of us. Working with Representative Santos over on the other side, and Representative Dolan. I know my dog's still crying. You guys see me in my apron? It's because he wants me to make him dinner. So he's whining over here, you guys. But working with our senators and our representatives, especially Representative Dolan, they really came up here and visited the 40th, along with Tana Sen, addressing childcare and early childcare learning. And I commend it, because having leadership like that come up to the 40th isn't just because the issue is important and the area is beautiful. It's because these senators respect Liz, because our representatives respect the integrity of Representative Rammel. It's because of the history of those who served before us, who made sure they set a foundation that we can step on. So really working hard on education is vital to us, but we got really good partners that we get to sit next to, maybe 6 feet apart in the Senate and in the House. So I know that question was, we were picking and choosing questions, but it really meant a lot for me to tell you guys how important this team is when we focus on education, and there are many elements to it for our kids.
And I would be remiss if I did not remind folks that ballots just arrived to support the Anacortes school levy. So make sure to turn your ballots in a timely fashion. And I will also say that we now have postage prepaid thanks to a wonderful bill that has come through the legislature. So remember, the most basic and foundational piece of our democracy is that you turn that ballot in. Thank you.
Thank you all for your responses. Our next question is for Representative Lukianoff. I saw on the news that there's going to be a police alert for missing Indigenous people. Can you talk a little bit about how it'll work and why it's needed?
Deborah, you're muted.
Thanks, Liz. I'll make this real quick because I'm kind of long-winded tonight. Again, because I miss you guys so much and I wish we were face-to-face. Missing and murdered Indigenous women has been a crisis in America for generations. The women of the Native American race is the highest race of every ethnic group across America, Canada, and the U.S. Yep, Alaska's even part of the U.S., Alaska, where our women are gone missing or gone murdered. There's no rhyme or reason to it other than what we've heard across from Canada to the U.S. than genocide, racism, and pure cruelty towards a race. The Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women Alert System does something that we think is going to wake up all of Washingtonian. It's going to reawaken across America. I'm speaking to Canada on the other side to do something as simple as this. The symbol for missing and murdered Indigenous women is the red hand or the black hand over the mouth. That represents that broadcasters, public safety, and governing elected officials are not addressing this crisis. The intent of the missing and murdered women, and it won't be people yet, women because we have the facts. The Attorney General's Missing and Murdered Indigenous Task Force and the Department of Interior, Deb Haaland's task force, is going to be working on where we get the statistics for the people. But this is removing the hand, having the broadcasters tell every Washingtonian, someone who looks like me and sounds like me has been torn away from my family. Someone who has an unheard scream who looks like me and sounds like me is going missing. And we want to be able to raise this awareness because it's not just an Indian issue. Native American women are have the 4 times higher rate to go missing than a white woman. This is not saying that any woman of any race is more important, but the numbers are just astounding. This is the start of many conversations, and I'm really thankful to join Senator Maka Dhingra in supporting this piece of legislation. The Attorney General, Bob Ferguson, we'll pause and say that for just a moment. Thank you so much for serving and recognizing this. But to all the women who are out there reaching out and protecting ourselves, this is an important bill. It's going to change history, and it comes out of the 40th. And Liz and Alex are part of making that movement of saying all of us are really looking to take care of one another. And it takes all governing body and every citizen to make a difference. We're removing the hand. I thank the broadcasters, Roland Thomas, for bringing this forward. It really came from the broadcasters and public safety to say, how do we remove barriers and how do we let every Washingtonian know that there's a Native American woman out there who's screaming because they are being abducted, they've been torn away, or they've been murdered. So we can do better things together. And that's what your 40th does. We got good values, we represent good people, and we make a difference for everyone. So I'll wrap it up there.
Great. Thank you, Representative Lukianoff. So our next question comes from the comment section. Joe asks, how are our state ferries looking in the transportation package to get a low income fare, new boats, and workforce retention? Senator Loveland?
Thanks. I'll be happy to start out with that. And I want to just give a huge thank you to Rep. Rammel and our other counterpart, Representative Dave Paul from the 10th District, who represents Whidbey Island, for the tremendous work that we have come together to do around ensuring that the ask that is in the governor's budget is going to meet the immediate need in terms of staffing for our boats to be able to have reliability of service, and that we're looking ahead to the next couple of conversions and boats and the necessary terminal infrastructure as we begin to hybridize our fleet. So certainly it's been a rocky road for people this last couple of years, and WSF took some major hits on the COVID front with a loss of staff members there that was just tragic, and continued challenges in the workforce due to folks retiring and other circumstances. And where we found ourselves is that we need to increase the reliability of the pipeline of folks that are entering into these marine trades. So I've been working with Senator Kaiser. She has an incredible omnibus pre-apprenticeship bill that is going to help work on the recruitment portion of the program to get folks into the maritime trades. We know that there are some very specific challenges to entering maritime versus other trades, in that you have to have federal background checks. You have to work within the auspices of what the Coast Guard governs. So it makes it a little bit different point of entry than it is for other places in labor. And so we're working on creating pathways in the pre-apprenticeship space, in addition to working on modernizing what we need out of the apprenticeship program. So for example, we're going to need oilers and engineers and all kinds to work on our diesel fleet. But as we continue to modernize, we're going to need folks trained on the new technologies in the battery space. Additionally, we want to make sure that we are getting ourselves set up to have the electrical charging infrastructure that's going to be necessary in order to, once we have these hybrid boats join the fleet, have a place to plug in at every terminal across the system. In terms of low income fares, that has definitely been a question that we have started to address, working with the Utilities and Transportation Commission, who works on setting different rates and fares. One proposal is to have kids sail free. I know, Joe, that's not going to help in your particular case. Personally, I would like to see Orca cards extended. I would like to see us be working on last mile service, on free rides in the disabled community. I think there's a lot of ways that we can work to find increased connectivity in our communities, especially for our folks that live out on the islands and have to commute that way. So we're going to continue to work on that. But what I will say in the short term, we're working on a mini transportation package, need to get to our immediate needs, especially for the ferry system. And that's what I'm keeping my focus on. In addition to the rural ferry, we have one that we need in Anacortes to get back and forth to Guimas, and other rural transit issues. So I really believe that there's a path forward. And I'll just give a shout out, because I see Rocio is here. One of the transportation budget provisos that I am very proud to sponsor comes from Disability Rights Washington. And it has to do with the fact that we know that there's a lot of folks that are in our transit systems and non-motorized users of our roadways that really haven't been counted. We have kind of a rough estimate of how many people are in that space. And what we really need are hard numbers to know exactly how many non-motorized users are out there in our transit system, so that we can really meet their needs. I was able to work with their visibility project over this fall, and had a chance to ride around on a scat bus with one of my very dear friends for the day, and talk to folks as they were riding the bus, and just really get a sense of the fact that when we have public transit, it's a service, not a business. And same thing is for our ferries. While we have a tremendous operating budget recapture, fare box recapture for the ferries, we also need to keep in mind that not everybody can afford it. So we will continue to work in that space. We're going to have a mini transportation package that's going to come out this year and take care of immediate needs. And we continue to work on both short, medium, and long-term solutions for our Washington State ferry system.
Great. Thank you, Senator Loveland. So this is just a reminder that you can submit questions live in the comments section. Apologies, trying to pull this up. Okay, so our next question is In the 2022 transportation package, what is happening to increase funding for active transportation, safety, equity, and mobility investments? Rep. Bramall?
Thank you for that. Thanks for the question. I think Senator Lovelit may have answered some pieces of that already, but I'll just reiterate. I think one of the big projects this year is the idea of a mini transportation package. It won't be as big as some of the historic ones, but it will be significant, and we can address some really urgent and important problems. And when we're moving forward with a transportation package that will be smaller, that just means we have to do some pencil sharpening and prioritizing. And I can tell you that our caucus has set 5 priorities for that transportation package. And you've heard some of those already. Ferries, right at the top of the list for all of us, but it's at the top of the list for our caucus as well. Funding for culverts. We absolutely have to meet our obligations there to protect the salmon, increase habitat, and meet our responsibilities on culverts. Climate maintenance is one that gets forgotten so much. And finally is that mobility one. And I think that's really what gets to this question. We need to make sure that we're doing more to provide transportation options for folks who aren't driving. And so the proviso that Senator Lovelit just mentioned is an important piece of that. That's things like safe routes to schools, and expanding our other alternate transportation mechanisms. So all of those are priorities that will be part of the transportation package. And just to manage expectations, what that means is that road expansions, big new proposals are going to be harder to do. That's what prioritizing means, and that's my intention to continue to push for those things, and I think we're in alignment on that.
All of those things are incredible, and this wasn't I don't sit on the transportation committee, but I sit in appropriations and sit in a couple other different committees. But one thing that we didn't think we'd hear 20 years ago is climate change when it came to transportation, right? We didn't hear about the extreme storms that we faced a couple days ago or a couple weeks ago, right? Alex, when you were up north, up in Whatcom, you couldn't even come off the driveways because we were completely flooded from the storms. We didn't hear, we were facing extreme flooding, right, Liz, down on the Samish Flats. When people, if there was an emergency, how could the transportation get through to run an ambulance to get someone off of Samish Island? Our Skagit farms were flooded. Our fishermen were facing incredible storms as they tried to crab. I just really commend my team here. We have an incredible opportunity to work towards incorporating climate change into our transportation projects and into our future. We see that our culverts are going to be built green with climate change. We see bridges, infrastructure. Alex is running another bill where buildings are going to be green with our good representative Dewar down in Snohomish County. Transportation is a big part of our life and our livelihood, but it's wonderful to be able to serve with folks as my dog whines to me because he wants some more food. It's great for us to be able to sit and say out loud, we're building long-term transportation plans so we can help Slider Road up in Lummi get replaced. So we can look at the flats and the 100 tide gates that need to be replaced down in the Skagit. So when we look out towards our sheriffs who are looking towards having emergency response systems in the Skagit and the Whatcom, that we provide services for them. When we talk about transportation, it's a family of major issues. And one of the best parts is when Liz and Alex and I talk with our colleagues, we could say transportation, but it's all intertwined with the family around the table. And talking about climate change, talking about floods, talking about extreme weather, talking about ferries, talking about road systems, talking about infrastructure, bridges. We're kind of nerdy, but we like it. And those are things that really make this group of the three of us click really well, because we have the experience as a city council member, as someone in governmental affairs who works with tribes, and someone at Alex's stature who has worked across the board on land and vessel when it comes to transportation. So I wasn't supposed to jump in here, but my two colleagues moved me. And I got to say, if we're going to talk about transportation, we got to talk about the extreme weather impact upon us and what a difference that we all made with our friends around the North End. Okay, I got to get him a bone or else he's going to bark. I'll be right back, team.
Okay, well, thank you, Representative Lukanov. So our next question actually is for you, Rep. Lukanov. So maybe I will move along to the next one, and we'll come back to that. So the next question then is, there are a number of bills seeking to reduce the sales tax. Which, if any, do you support? Why or why not? This is for all of you. So Senator Lovelet, would you like to begin?
Sure. Yeah, we are in a really good budget outlook in every budget besides the transportation budget. And what I will say is that we're kind of in a place where we understand the regressive nature of our tax code and how that impacts everyday working folks in our communities and seniors in particular. We have a great bill that is in the Senate right now that has to do with eliminating the tax on diapers, both for babies and for adults. I'm a fan of that. But what I will say is, instead of talking about reducing sales tax, let's talk about taxing the wealthy. This is not a proposal that's on the table this minute, but it has been under a long conversation as we talk about restructuring our tax code to help make it less regressive for working folks. But there are plenty of people in our state that aren't paying their fair share. We have folks at the lower end paying closer to 17% of their income in the form of taxes, and we have folks at the upper end of the scale paying less than 3% of their income as taxes. And I think it's time to tax wealth instead of work. So let's continue to work together on building on the incredible job that has already been done, the data that's been collected, the community meetings that have happened with the tax restructure group led by Representative Noel Frame and our own Senator Keith Wagoner. It's been bipartisan. It has been all over the state. And I think we have a lot of momentum in 2023 to really take a crack at some of the places in our code that we know are penalizing people, particularly those that are impoverished.
Yeah, 100%, Senator Lovelet. I guess I would just add on to that. One of the messages that's out there is that Washington State is flush with cash. I've heard that said on the floor a number of times, and it's we've got to be really, really careful with that language because it is misleading. Because while our budget is sufficient right now, most of the money that we have is one time only. It's federal government stimulus money that we won't get again. And some of the other revenue that we've seen up is things like, for a variety of reasons, folks bought a lot of cars last year. So sales tax went up there. Those people aren't going to buy cars again for a few years. And so we're going to see a decline in the near future. And so when we have one-time money like that, we have to be very, very cautious. And so there's messages out there that say, oh, we should do across-the-board tax cuts, or we should buy a lot of new things. And I think, if somebody sends you a generous Christmas present, you don't quit your job. We need to make sure that we are being responsible and thinking more than just 1 or 2 years out. So there are some good ideas out there that I think Representative Paul suggested a one-time sales tax holiday to help our struggling small businesses. We could structure that right around time for back to school to help families and parents. I think that's an idea that might have some merit. But I think we have to be real careful and real responsible when we think about our budget this year.
I'll jump in real quickly. I agree with my colleagues. You're right. That bill that my friend Alex is talking about is House Bill 2018, tax-free weekend. Dave Paul comes from community-oriented. These are military families. We know our military families don't make much. We know our small communities of Skagit. We are a demographic that really is the folks that do bake sales. We're Little League coaches. We're the people that take care of our community. We're the ones who buy houses, buy property tax, and live here for generations, like Liz and Anacortes. I think this tax-free weekend is really something special, but it recognizes the integrity of community, and especially rural community. And I always say the 40th is still a rural community, from Bellingham all the way down through the Skagit, Anacortes, and San Juan. We're not big city people. We still remember to knock on our neighbor's door and take care of one another. We're looking at, Senator Doss's bill, Senate Bill 5232, to reduce the state sales tax from 6.5% to 5.5%. Looking at how we move that forward and how we address it. I deeply respect Senator Doss. She is a woman of color. She's a woman of community integrity. She listens, she finds a balanced decision, and she works well with all of us. And we'll see where that bill goes. Other specific bills, Liz, the diaper tax. I mean, how many diapers can all of us as moms go through? Dads, oh my goodness. That's really important. But us as women, looking at the incredible bill, who would have thought 20 years ago we would have done a menstrual product tax relief? My goodness, like who would have ever? I got goosebumps just a little bit as we were talking about, and I still can't figure out why we're talking about the rights of women's bodies still today. But we're talking about diaper taxes and menstrual taxes. I raise my hands to the women and the men who raised that, who aren't afraid. But 20 years ago, we would not have had that conversation. Okay. And when we do e-bike tax relief, I don't know if you guys all felt this, but I felt it. I gotta say, I better be careful. Representative Shoemake just said yes on an e-bike tax relief, because we all are those folks who enjoy getting on the outdoors. And that lady has been really excited about the e-bike tax relief. And Liz, I think I'm going to get one. I think I'm going to try it. I went down to the bike shop. I tried it. I think I might be that little old lady at 50 who's so cute riding a bike.
Anacortes is the place for that, man.
I know.
We got all the places you can ride around on your bike.
We could get one. You could stick your dog and I'll stick my dog, and we will be totally cool going to the farmer's market this summer.
We'll be the benevolent witches of the Northwest, perhaps. Ooh. It makes me think of, gives me a Wizard of Oz vibe to think of us riding around with our tiny dogs and little baskets on our bicycles. But
we can have fun. We'll invite you, Shoemake. Alex, you'll have to come down and join us. And then also, just to wrap up on House Bill 1333, extending the date for rural counties to use local tax and use taxes for public facilities. I co-sponsored. It comes from my colleagues here. It's going over to the Senate. We know it's going to help. We know it's going to do really well. Alex really did a lot of work on this bill and educating me and educating others. So this is a family thought bill from the 40th. So I'll stop there.
Great. Thank you all for your responses. So our next question is for Representative Lukanoff. What's being done on salmon recovery this year?
Are you kidding, you guys? I'll talk for the next 15 minutes on salmon. Oh my gosh. But
you get 3.
Yeah, we get 3, Deb. We got more questions to work through.
I'll work 3. Let's start with this. Salmon is an icon, and no one has heard about salmon so much in the state legislature since I got there. And I've got 2 great colleagues who speak the same language as I do. We're doing all we can to do salmon recovery, but let me be really clear. On the plate in Washington State, we have a potato, we have cauliflower, we have kale, we have raspberries, we have red potatoes, we have salmon, we have beef, we have a glass of milk, and we have elk and deer. Those are the value foods that make up Washington State. The only way that we're going to be able to address seeds in one hand, salmon eggs in the other, and growth management is if we do it together. The bill that you saw, the Lorraine Loomis bill that was came through that many of you saw in the news, we were able to work together with the tribes, with the agriculture community, with industry, with cities and counties. This year, we're coming together and doing a stakeholder table to talk about how do we best preserve all of the industries within Washington State the growth of cities and counties, and we work towards promoting how we live together, work together, because we're all Washingtonians. We can do better. Look for our bills. We're going to collaborate, and we can only do it not pointing the finger, but saying every piece of food on that plate's important. Every culture is important, and it takes all of us working as one. And I got two great colleagues who share those same value systems, and I think we can get there. Okay, 3 minutes, Alex. I think I did it.
Nice work. You've been absolutely tireless on this topic. It's impressive to be able to fit all of the work that you've done into 3 minutes.
Thank you, Alex.
It was actually even less than 3 minutes, so way to go, Replicanov. So our next question is, how will you advocate for community equity ownership requirements, co-ops, and trusts to be an essential part of legislation that increases housing density? Rep. Ramo?
Thanks. That's an astute question. So I think folks know that a major part of the challenges we have in Washington with the cost of living is our housing crisis, right? It's the biggest line item for most of us in our budget. And for far too many of us, our housing expenses are well outside what we can realistically afford. So, I try to think about that crisis, those challenges, as a ladder, because there's different work that needs to be done to support folks who are in middle income but having trouble finding housing that they can afford near where they work, versus folks who are towards the bottom of the income ladder and just need any place that they can afford. And so we have different policy priorities that we need to take on to address each of the rungs of that ladder. So the missing middle legislation that's advancing in the House, and I think there's a companion bill moving over in the Senate too, is...
Can I just interrupt to say we got that out with like massive bipartisan support out of committee today, and it's like an even stronger version than what's in the House. So that was like enormously exciting. Yes.
Fantastic. Nice work. So it's advancing in both the House and the Senate, I think I can say, and which is great news. What that will do is substantially improve the availability of housing. We've got a 250,000 home deficit in Washington State. That means we ought to have 250,000 more homes than we have right now. And as population grows, we're falling further and further behind, and that is what we need to do to address that supply challenge. But just answering that, and this getting a long way around to the answer to that question, just doing that will help folks who are maybe middle, moderate income, but it's not going to help the folks who need the most help, because those new homes built at market rate, they still will be priced out. And so the solution there, again, I'm a broken record on this, but fully funding our housing trust fund has to be part of that solution, so that we can support all of the nonprofit partners that can help build that up. And that includes community land trusts, Habitat for Humanity, and many others that can support folks who are maybe able to afford a mortgage, but not able to afford a big down payment. One other smaller line item I'll note, I'm working this year, and we'll be sending a letter to budget chairs shortly, asking for support to build up the community land trusts around the state. I was fortunate earlier in my life with a young family as a single dad to be able to benefit from a community land trust. It is a model that works really well. We have more community land trusts in the 40th district than in any other part of Washington state, but there's a lot of people in a lot of places in Washington that don't have those services. We can build that up. And so I'm looking to our budget chairs this year that help support a proviso to grow the community land trust movement around Washington state.
Great. Thank you so much for your response. So that is actually all the time we have for questions this evening. Thank you to everyone who submitted a question. I'm now going to turn it back over to the lawmakers for some closing remarks. Representative Lukanov, would you like to begin?
Oh my gosh, I won't take up much time. Liz and Alex, I miss you both. Like, I cannot wait till we can come together. I'm so enormously grateful to be able to work with good people like you. This team for me represents the values of the 40th. I am, I'm working hard in Olympia. We've got a great team working on some good issues. But please know, when Rocio comes to testify, we get so excited. When we see many of you come in and testify, sharing on climate change, you guys keep testifying, keep sending us your letters, keep sending us stances, keep telling your story. Because when we go to tell our story to move the bills that are important to us, right, Liz and Alex, we say Sharon told us about the climate change that's happening within San Juan Islands, and she's telling us about the plastic that is washing up on the shore. Rocio is telling us about what's happening to our community in disabilities. You know, we talked to the Friendship House, and they're telling us about what's happening to our communities and the homeless. We get to sit down with Dustin and Anacortes and listen to how we can do better to fund and help our communities in addressing our homeless, those who need help, and how can we provide that. We get to talk to Jamie Stevens and Cindy Wolf over in San Juan Islands on the extreme storms of climate change, where they're washing out the road systems, where we have 30 families who cannot get there. You know, we get to talk to families and parents of San Juan County who are saying, I had to take a boat across the way to get my child at 6 o'clock in the night before the storm came. And thank you, Liz, for finding a pathway to create ferry systems that work for us. We get to work with the amazing community of Swinomish as they start addressing the mascot conversation of removing the mascot of Native Americans and being used and abused in that way. We get to talk to Lisa up in Lummi Nation about the flooding that's happening in Whatcom County. This is our community. This is who you all are. And every day I get to listen to all of you, but I get to work next to Liz and Alex and say, what can we do? What can we do better? We spread it out and we do it really well, and we're a team. And I think that's what's most important. But y'all got to keep telling us your story, telling us how we can find solutions, and we'll do the best we can to find solutions together, but also with our colleagues in the Senate and the House.
Go for it, Alex.
All right, I'll jump in. I hope everybody can see why I love working with this team so much. I have so much admiration and respect for both Liz and Deborah. Thanks for being on the team. And for the behind the scenes, Megan, we've heard from a little bit, but all of our legislative assistant teams. We're fortunate to have a collaborative relationship. And what I really just want to emphasize for folks, we did not get all the questions today. We didn't get to all of the things I had notes on to talk about. We didn't talk about redistricting. We didn't talk about the Long-Term Care Act, ghost guns and preventing gun violence and police accountability. We've got lots more to talk about, and we are here to listen and talk. If this forum is too short, we're ready to schedule more. And one of the upsides of this virtual world is that you don't have to drive 3 hours to come to Olympia to talk to us. And if it is not a committee hearing or floor time, you're the priority for my schedule. Reach out. We didn't get to your question. We'd love to have a conversation. And I'm sure we will communicate in the chat and in the notes here how to reach out and schedule that. Would love to have that conversation. It's such an important part of this job. And I will turn it over to you, Liz.
And I'll just say good night and stay healthy, everybody, and go love up on your families and friends. We'll see you next time.
Right. So that's all the time we have this evening. Thank you so much for attending and for submitting questions for your lawmakers. As Rep. Bramwell said, if we didn't get to your question, you can directly contact all three of them with your comments. Their contact information will actually be on the screen shortly. Thank you so much for joining us and have a great evening.